There is a moment, often so subtle you barely notice it, where your energy shifts from possibility into pressure, a tightening in the chest, a small flare of urgency, a mental grip that whispers, I need this to happen. And in that instant, without realizing it, you step out of the flow of manifestation and into the mechanics of control. It feels like effort. It feels like focus. It feels like determination. But energetically, it's the moment your signal becomes distorted. Because in the quantum world, holding on doesn't bring things closer, it freezes the timeline that was trying to unfold. This is the paradox almost everyone misses. The more tightly you hold a desire, the more you communicate to the field that you do not yet have access to it. The grip is a broadcast. The tension is a message. And once you understand this, everything changes.
There is a moment, often so subtle you barely notice it, where your energy shifts from possibility into pressure, a tightening in the chest, a small flare of urgency, a mental grip that whispers, I need this to happen. And in that instant, without realizing it, you step out of the flow of manifestation and into the mechanics of control. It feels like effort. It feels like focus. It feels like determination. But energetically, it's the moment your signal becomes distorted. Because in the quantum world, holding on doesn't bring things closer. It freezes the timeline that was trying to unfold. This is the paradox almost everyone misses. The more tightly you hold a desire, the more you communicate to the field that you do not yet have access to it. The grip is a broadcast. The tension is a message. The urge to cling is its own frequency, and the quantum responds to frequency before intention. When your inner world contracts around a desire, the field reads the contraction as uncertainty, as lack, as an unresolved identity, and the field cannot collapse into form when the signal is tangled. The physics behind this is simple but rarely understood. When you hold on mentally or emotionally, you create decoherence, tiny fluctuations in your electromagnetic field that destabilize resonance. Coherence is what collapses potential into reality. Decoherence delays it. So while your mind might be telling the universe, I want this, your body is broadcasting, I don't trust this. And the body's broadcast always wins. The nervous system interprets attachment as threat, not because the desire itself is dangerous, but because the intensity around it signals that something is at stake. When something is at stake, your physiology enters micro-survival mode. Your breath shortens. Your diaphragm stiffens. Your awareness becomes narrow, fixated, vigilant. These subtle shifts trigger the body's ancient systems for monitoring danger. But the body has no way of distinguishing emotional risk from physical risk. Contraction is contraction. And when your system contracts, your broadcast collapses into the frequency of protection rather than creation. This is why attachment slows manifestation. Protection and creation cannot happen simultaneously. Protection closes the field. Creation opens it. Protection contracts your energy. Creation expands it. Protection demands certainty. Creation requires openness. Every time you grip mentally or emotionally, you unconsciously signal that you are not ready to receive. The universe doesn't read your intention. It reads your capacity. Spiritual traditions speak about non-attachment, not as a moral ideal, but as a vibrational necessity. Letting go is not about abandoning your desires. It's about removing the static that prevents the universe from responding. It's a release of pressure that allows your frequency to rise above emotional turbulence. It's the moment your field stops broadcasting fear disguised as longing. And when the fear dissolves, resonance increases. Manifestation becomes possible again. But letting go is not something you do. It is something that happens when your inner world becomes spacious enough to hold the desire without gripping it. And that spaciousness begins in the body, not the mind. The mind clings because it was taught to survive by controlling outcomes. The body clings because it remembers the past. The field delays because it mirrors what the body feels, not what the mind wants. This is why you can spend hours visualizing and still feel stuck. Why you can set intentions and feel no movement. Why you can repeat affirmations but remain emotionally in the same place. All of those techniques are mental, but your broadcast is somatic. And until the body enters a state of openness, the field cannot move. The release point the moment detachment begins is physical. It's the softening of the upper abdomen, the widening behind the heart. The inhale that doesn't try to be deep, but becomes deep because the tension loosens. The exhale that doesn't perform relaxation but expresses it. These tiny shifts are the first signs that your body is no longer gripping your timeline. And as soon as the grip releases, your frequency becomes clear enough for the universe to register what you're actually ready for. In the comments, drop one word that describes what you're ready to release your grip on. Maybe it's control. Maybe it's urgency. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's something uniquely yours. Let that word be a small but profound declaration, a signal you send not just in this space, but into the quantum field itself. On a quantum level, detachment is simply the absence of interference. When you detach, you stop sending mixed signals. You stop collapsing probabilities prematurely with fear. You stop using mental images to compensate for emotional tension. You stop trying to. This is the moment the field becomes active, not because you asked harder, but because you finally stopped blocking the response. Once you understand this, you stop trying to let go and start creating the conditions in which letting go happens naturally. You begin to notice when your breath reveals fear, when your shoulders reveal longing, when your stomach reveals doubt. You learn to soften those places instead of fighting them. And as you soften, your field stabilizes. Manifestation begins not when you focus strongly enough, but when your energy stops gripping strongly enough. This is the release point. This is where quantum manifestation actually activates. And this is where your timeline finally becomes free to move. Attachment is one of the most misunderstood forces in manifestation. People assume attachment means caring deeply, wanting intensely, or showing commitment to a desire. But energetically, attachment is not love. It's tension. It's the internal strain that forms when your desire stops being an invitation and becomes a requirement. The moment you need something in order to feel whole, stable, safe, or validated, your energy collapses inward. What was once an open channel becomes a closed loop, and the timeline that was moving toward you begins to slow. Attachment is not emotional devotion. It's emotional gripping, a subtle contraction that happens when your nervous system believes your future depends on a specific outcome. It's the feeling of, if this doesn't happen, I won't be okay. That belief sends your entire body into a state of hypervigilance. Your awareness scans for signs. Your breath becomes shallow. Your chest remains slightly armored. Your stomach tightens just enough to distort your internal rhythm. None of this feels dramatic, but all of it is vibrationally loud. The quantum field doesn't respond to your desire. It responds to the emotional state underneath your desire. And attachment broadcasts one message repeatedly. I don't have this yet. This message is not sent through your thoughts. It's sent through your physiology. The field listens to your body, not your affirmations. So even when you visualize, script, meditate, and set intentions, if your body is gripping the desire, the universe receives a signal of absence. Neuroscience shows that attachment activates the same neural circuits responsible for threat detection. The body becomes locked in a perpetual cycle of scanning. Is it here yet? Did something change? Is the manifestation close? Did I miss a sign? This scanning creates a feedback loop that keeps you anchored to the emotional memory of not having. And because the nervous system predicts the future based on emotional memory, it keeps you aligned with the timeline where the desire remains ahead of you. Attachment also creates distortion in the heart field. The electromagnetic field generated by the heart that plays a major role in how you broadcast your identity to the quantum. When you cling emotionally, your heart rhythm becomes jagged, inconsistent, and incoherent. Even if you're trying to be positive, even if you're imagining the best possible outcome, the field doesn't pick up the image, it picks up the incoherence. And incoherence slows manifestation because it can't collapse into a stable reality. Spiritually, attachment is often described as craving, but craving is just the emotional surface of a deeper vibrational truth, a belief that you cannot access your future unless something external changes first. This belief creates dependency. Dependency creates contraction. Contraction creates delay. And delay becomes the story of your life. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your energy isn't spacious enough to hold what you're asking for. The irony is that attachment is always rooted in fear. Not fear of the desire itself, but fear of who you believe you'll be without it. Fear that if it doesn't happen soon, you'll fall behind. Fear that if it doesn't manifest, your identity won't rise. Fear that you're running out of time. Fear that the universe doesn't hear you. Fear that the past will repeat. This fear becomes the dominant frequency, and because the quantum mirrors frequency, not intention, the fear broadcasts louder than the desire. But the moment you begin to recognize attachment as a physiological pattern, not a failure or flaw, everything changes. You start noticing when you're gripping energetically. You sense the contraction in your chest. You hear the urgency in your thoughts. You feel the tightness in your breath. And awareness alone creates a small crack in the pattern. That crack is where freedom begins. You don't have to force yourself to let go. You only have to see the gripping clearly enough for your body to stop rehearsing it. Because letting go isn't something you do. Letting go is what happens when your system stops bracing. When you stop bracing, your frequency rises naturally. When your frequency rises, coherence increases. When coherence increases, the field responds. Not because you demanded it, but because you finally became energetically available. And if you can feel that truth settling into your body right now, even slightly, then anchor it in a way your energy system can recognize. Type in the comments, "I soften my grip." Not as a trick, not as a wish, but as a signal. The moment your body begins releasing the pattern that slowed your timeline. Because once the grip softens even a little, your manifestation doesn't just speed up. It finally has room to arrive. If this resonates with you, hit subscribe and click the bell icon next to it. Also, join our manifestation club on gogetter.au. This isn't just a channel, this is a frequency. If you felt something shift while watching, you're already tuned in. We're not just consuming content here, we're dissolving energetic interference. Let's keep expanding together. There is a very specific moment inside the manifestation process that almost nobody talks about. Not because it's complicated, but because it's too quiet to be noticed. A moment where the desire is still present, but the emotional weight around it dissolves. Where you still care, but you no longer cling. Where the intention remains alive, but the tension that once surrounded it has evaporated. This is the detachment shift, the state where manifestation stops crawling toward you and begins accelerating on its own. Most people misunderstand detachment as indifference, passivity, or giving up, but energetically, detachment is the most potent form of permission. It signals to the universe that your internal world is no longer interfering with the outcome. It tells the field, I'm not bracing, I'm not gripping, I'm not controlling, I'm open. And openness creates speed. The universe responds fastest when your energy becomes unobstructed, not when your desire becomes louder. To understand why detachment accelerates manifestation, you have to understand how energy behaves when you release internal resistance. Attachment creates drag. Drag lowers your frequency. Lower frequency disrupts coherence, and coherence is the currency of quantum creation. When you detach, you remove drag instantly. Your field becomes smoother, quieter, clearer, and the quantum responds to clarity with precision. In neuroscience, this state correlates with a shift out of predictive tension. When you stop obsessively monitoring your desire, your brain stops trying to protect you from disappointment. It stops overfiring circuits linked to vigilance. Your nervous system stops anticipating threat. And as these circuits relax, your physiology enters a state of openness, technically measurable as increased vagal tone, smoother heart rate variability, and a reduction in microcontractions across the chest and abdomen. These physiological changes aren't just interesting. They're the mechanism. They're the reason your manifestation speeds up. When the body relaxes, the emotional memory of lack stops dominating your vibration. When the emotional memory of lack disappears, your signal rises. And when your signal rises, your future can finally recognize you. Spiritual traditions call this surrender. But surrender is not passive, it's receptive. It's a shift from trying to force reality into alignment to allowing reality to rearrange itself around your coherence. When you detach, you're not saying, "I don't want this anymore." You're saying, "I'm no longer interfering with the timeline that's already forming." This is what makes detachment so powerful. It gives the universe room to work. The detachment shift is not something you create with thoughts. It's something you feel in your body. It begins with neutrality, not the neutrality of apathy, but the neutrality of trust. The kind that arises when you no longer need the desire to arrive in order to feel aligned. When your emotional state stops depending on the outcome is free to accelerate. Neutrality is energetic spaciousness. Spaciousness is magnetic. When you're neutral, your field becomes quiet enough for the future to land. You stop sending desperate signals. You stop pinging the universe with mixed frequencies. You stop collapsing potential into fear-based outcomes. You become still. And stillness is where probability collapses the fastest. In physics, this is the reduction of interference. When a wave is no longer disrupted by chaotic inputs, it stabilizes and collapses into form faster. Your energy works the same way. When you detach, your emotional waves stop colliding with each other. They become coherent, and coherent waves collapse realities without delay. The detachment shift has 2. A widening of awareness. You stop scanning for signs and start noticing your life again. The constant mental checking dissolves. 3. A grounded calm. Not excitement, not anticipation, just a stable knowing that no longer depends on timing. These sensations are not accidental. They are the somatic markers of coherence, and coherence is the accelerator. When your body shifts into coherence, your signal stabilizes. When your signal stabilizes, the future moves faster. Not because you pushed harder, not because you visualized more vividly, but because you finally stopped contradicting yourself. Detachment is not the absence of desire. It's the absence of obstruction. It's what happens when your body is no longer trying to micromanage the future. It's what happens when your emotional field stops clutching at possibilities. It's what happens when your identity stops depending on outcomes and starts resting in presence. And presence is the frequency of rapid manifestation. This is why the moment you finally let go, truly let go, things begin to shift almost immediately. Messages come through, opportunities appear, synchronicities intensify, people respond differently. Solutions reveal themselves. Timelines accelerate. It feels like life was waiting behind a door that only opens when you stop pushing. You're not losing control when you detach. You're removing the resistance that was slowing everything down. And once you experience the speed of a universe that no longer has to fight your grip, you'll never want to manifest from tension again. In the comments, share one thing that shifted when you finally let go of trying to control it. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a career move. Maybe it's abundance. Maybe it's something uniquely yours. Your release matters. Your acceleration matters. Because you matter. Something remarkable happens when detachment becomes your natural state rather than a practice you're trying to maintain. You begin to feel as if life is reorganizing itself around you, rather than you rearranging yourself around life. Decisions come easier. Timing feels cleaner. Opportunities appear without the emotional turbulence you once associated with growth. It's as if the universe has been waiting for one thing this entire time, for you to stop gripping long enough for it to move. This is the identity that sits beneath all true manifestation. The version of you who doesn't need to chase, push, manage, or control outcomes because they've stopped anchoring their worth in what hasn't happened yet. This identity doesn't manifest through force. It manifests through availability, an energetic openness that tells the field there is space for this now. And the universe responds to space with speed and precision. In this identity, you're no longer vibrating with the emotional memory of lack. You're not negotiating with your desires. You're not attempting to override old patterns through sheer effort. Your body is no longer rehearsing fear disguised as urgency. Instead, there's a grounded coherence that radiates from your chest outward, the kind of coherence that tells the field exactly who you are, without a single word spoken. This identity is not built through willpower. It emerges when the emotional static that once clouded your signal dissolves, when the grip loosens, when the nervous system stops bracing for disappointment, when the heart stops tightening around timing, when your sense of self stops depending on external confirmation. What remains is an energy the universe recognizes instantly because it is the closest frequency to truth you can broadcast. On a physical level, this identity feels like stability. Your breath settles into a natural rhythm. Your heart field becomes smooth, measurable as coherence in the electromagnetic wave around your body. Your awareness widens into a kind of calm clarity. Even your posture shifts subtly. Shoulders relaxed, sternum open, belly soft. You are no longer leaning into the future, trying to pull it closer. You are rooted in the present, in a way that allows the future to approach without resistance. And this is the part most people never fully understand. Manifestation speeds up not because you become better at wanting, but because you become better at receiving. Wanting is loud. Receiving is quiet. Wanting is full of motion. Receiving is full of presence. Wanting says, I need this to happen. Receiving says, I'm ready when it does. And the field responds to readiness. It hesitates with need. In spiritual language, this identity is often described as surrender, trust, or alignment. But those words can feel abstract until you experience what they mean in your body. Surrender feels like space. Trust feels like warmth. Alignment feels like neutrality. These are not emotions you force. They are the emotional byproducts of letting go. They are the natural state that emerges when you are no longer carrying the weight of your own expectations. And here's the real magic. Once you inhabit this identity long enough, life begins to feel orchestrated, not controlled, orchestrated. You feel guided rather than driven. Your intuition becomes reliable. Your impulses become cleaner. You act without overthinking. You choose without fear. You move without second-guessing. This is not because you suddenly acquired special abilities. It's because your energy stopped contradicting itself. The identity that thrives in the open field doesn't chase alignment. It expresses alignment. It doesn't plead for clarity. It lives from clarity. It doesn't try to collapse timelines. It becomes the version of you that timelines collapse around naturally. This identity is not effort. It is embodiment. And if, as you hear this, you can sense that something inside you is already shifting, a loosening, a softening, a quiet internal yes, then you're closer to this identity than you think. The fact that you can feel it means the field is already adjusting around you. You're already stepping out of attachment. You're already stepping into coherence. You're already entering the space where manifestation activates with ease. But embodiment deepens with guidance, with structure, with practices that stabilize the nervous system, open the emotional body, and attune your identity to the frequency of receiving instead of gripping. And if you're ready to take this shift further, from understanding it to living it, there's a path waiting for you. Everything you need to anchor this identity is inside the Awaken Your Quantum Power ebook and its practical companion guide. It's designed to help you dissolve attachment at the root, rewire your emotional field for coherence, and align your identity with the timelines that are already reaching toward you. You'll find